In today's video, I'm going to cover the zones that you'll find in a typical reservoir. What you're looking at here is the zones that are found in Canton Lake. Canton Lake is owned and operated by the Tulsa District of the Corps of Engineers, and it's in the Canadian River system, and it's upstream of Oklahoma City. What you see in this slide is the top of certain zones. So here you can see you have the top of the inactive zone, which is 1596.5. A very basic definition of the inactive zone is that if you have any water that's in the inactive zone, if you want to get it out of the reservoir, then you're going to need to pump it out of the reservoir because it's actually below the lowest outlet that you'll find in the dam. And by the way, in this image, this gray figure here is a representation of the dam. Above the inactive zone, you have the conservation zone. Here you have the top of conservation at 1615.4. The conservation zone is basically just what it sounds like. It's set aside to conserve water for future use, and these uses that they're conserving water for can be water supply, it can be hydropower. You may even set aside some water for downstream water quality. For instance, you may have a minimum release that you make for downstream water quality. Basically any type of use or any type of set aside for a future use, that's what the conservation pool is used for. Above the conservation zone, you have the flood zone, and this is where water is set aside temporarily to try to help alleviate downstream flooding impacts. Here you can see that on this particular date, this is 08 September 2019, that you're slightly into the flood pool. So you have a top of conservation at 1615.4, and the current elevation is 1615.6, so you're 2/10 of a foot into the flood pool. Here you have the top of the flood zone at 1638. Now the top of the flood zone may not have or typically it doesn't have a specific characteristic that can be applied to all reservoirs. If we look at, this is out of the Baxter Bulletin, and we can look at North Fork Dam. Now North Fork Dam is on the White River system, and it's in Arkansas. You're looking at the Tana gates. These are the gray gates, and you're looking on the downstream side of North Fork Dam. Now at North Fork Dam, the top of the flood pool is going to correspond to the elevation of the top of these gates when these gates are in the closed position. So that might be one definition that you'd have for the top of the flood zone. You may also have some freeboard, so it might be related to the top of the gates, but maybe they make the top of the flood zone slightly below the elevation of the top of the gates when they're in the closed position. You may have an uncontrolled spillway at the reservoir, at the dam that you're looking at. So if you imagine this, again, this is the spillway, but imagine if you don't have any of these gates up top. Well, maybe the top of the flood pool would be the crest of this uncontrolled spillway. Basically, there's not one standard definition that you can use for top of flood zone, but those are some of the common ways that the top of the flood zone would be defined. One of the misconceptions that you'll find is that it's sometimes believed that the top of the flood pool is the highest that the reservoir can go, but that's not actually true. So for instance, if we're looking at the in this case North Fork Dam, you can see that water is passing under the gates. So when the water rises to the top of the gates, then you're going to raise the gates some, and what that does is it creates more storage and allows the pool to go higher without overtopping the gates, while also allowing some of the water to be released. So in this case, it's very likely that Norfolk, the elevation of Norfolk Dam when this photo was taken is actually above what is considered to be the top of the flood pool, because you're getting a higher top of gate elevation as these gates are being raised. So again, that is a misconception that's out there, but realize that the pool can actually go higher than the top of the flood pool. And whenever you get into this zone that's above the top of the flood pool, that is known as the surcharge pool. So that's a quick intro to the different zones that you'll find in the reservoirs. I'm going to be doing future videos that talk more about some of the basics of reservoir operations, along with some specific topics that deal with reservoir operations.